Hello. In July 2023, I had the opportunity to buy this beautiful Polarex 6-inch photoequatorial refractor. So it's called a 6-inch photoequatorial refractor because it has an aperture. The lens is 6 inches across, which is actually not that big in terms of modern telescopes. It's not unusual for people to have 12, even 16-inch reflectors. But this is a refractor. It's a lens telescope. And it also has a very long focal length. So we call this an F15 refractor, which gives it a focal length of about 2.5 meters. So it requires this massive photoequatorial mount to swing it. So one of the things that this is able to do is that as the Earth rotates, it can compensate for the Earth's rotation and hold the stars steady in the field of view of the telescope to allow astrophotography. So to do this, and this is not showing in the picture we're looking at now, it has a beautiful weight drive. So this is basically a clock mechanism which is powered by a falling weight, and it rotates the telescope very, very precisely to compensate the Earth's rotation. So I thought I would do this video to give a little bit of an introduction to the telescope, to let you know where I want to go with restoring it, and to tell you the story of tracking it over 1,000 kilometres from the place where it was last being used and stored to my dark sky cabin. So this is a Polarex telescope. So Polarex is one of a number of brands that was produced by a Japanese company called Nihon Seiko. I previously had done a lot of work on a 4-inch telescope, and the piece of advertisement we're looking at now is from probably the 1950s, late 1950s, and it shows on the right a 4-inch unitron, and on the left a 6-inch unitron. So unitron, Polarex, if you're in Germany, Weltblick, they're all rebrands of this manufacturer, Nihon Seiko. So the 4-inch is actually a peer model, like the 6-inch next to it. The 4-inch I restored was a tripod version with really nice wooden legs, not quite as robust as the peer version. There's an excellent history available of Nihon Seiko and Polarex and Unitron available at the Unitron History project. I put the web address just at the top of this picture here. This is curated by Dave Komar, who knows just about everything there is to know about these telescopes, and is, like myself, a dead set aficionado of them. This is another piece of advertising from about the same period. This particular version was used for many years, and this particular picture is from the 1970s, but the original photograph was taken in the 1950s, and it shows one of the early iterations of a 6-inch photoequatorial. So this version has got a smaller guide scope. That's the little subscope, if you like, off to the right, and strangely enough, a larger viewfinder than the version that I've got. I have strangely enough, it's a 2-inch or 50 millimeter viewfinder and a 4-inch guide scope on mine. So the photograph here is really well known amongst people who are interested in classic telescopes, and it's a real it's kind of like an icon of people who are interested in 1970s to 1990s telescopes, I guess. This is a picture of one of these 6-inch scopes in the wild. I'm not entirely sure where this is. I think it might be Rafe's Astronomy Center, and it shows one of these things set up and ready for observing. A few differences again from the one that I've got. So it has chrome setting circles, whereas mine are white on black. Additionally, it has a slightly different arrangement of control rods. It has 4 control rods, whereas I only have 3. Okay, so on to getting the scope. So the scope is in the next state, and it's like over 1,000 kilometers away, so 10 hours if I'm just on the speed limit without brakes. The reality is that I was looking at probably a 14-hour trip, so I got my good friend Bill to come along with me and share the driving. because we're going along Australian roads, I decided that I would actually crate the telescope up. People would go, well, why wouldn't you just get it shipped? Um, Shipping in Australia is crazy, crazy expensive, and like other places in the rest of the world, it's quite often that people tend to throw stuff around and use pallet trucks and all the rest of it. I just couldn't cope with the idea of this beautiful telescope being handled like that, so I went, no, I'm going to make my own crates and get them on the back of my trailer. I've got my trusty Jeep, and I'll drive down, pick it up, and bring it back. Famous last words. Anyhow, so we set out uh, 5 o'clock in the morning, and it was a beautiful, clear morning, and the moon was still up, and I think that's Jupiter just above it. So it's a very wrinkly picture because it was taken with my iPhone, low light levels. So very cold day, a very cold morning. Even with the sun up, it was only 4 degrees at about 6 o'clock. Very, very chilly, and the heater was out in the Jeep as well. Fortunately, the Jeep's got a nice big six-cylinder engine, and so I had enough of a leg warm up from that. So this is at the place where the scope was being sold, and this is the mount head. Incredibly heavy piece of aluminium, brass, and steel, and it's sitting on a dolly, and you'll see why later on once we get back to where we're going to. So already you can see where there are a few areas. There's some paint missing. The right ascension, that's the wheel that controls the rotation to compensate for the Earth's rotation, is very dirty. There's a lot of muck in there. It needs extensive cleaning. This is me crating it up with the vendor. I wasn't taking any chances with this thing moving around. So in addition to having lots of padding, which you can't see here, but we padded the crate really well, I also strapped it down onto that dolly section, and the dolly wheels are all completely braked, so they can't do anything. So this is us ready to get going again. There's Bill just climbing on top of the Jeep. So we transported the main scope, the big tube, just as a naked tube. We took all the fittings off it, so that nothing would come to harm. The big wooden box next to it is for the guide scope, and everything else is in the trailer behind. So all up, a fully crated 6-inch photoequatorial weighs 950 pounds or thereabouts. So that's just on the limit of what I can tow in that trailer and the trailer. This is important, as you'll see later on. So we got to the dark site where my cabin is. It took us over 20 hours to get there, and the reason was that we detoured. Siri told us that, oh, there's a much quicker route, much faster route to get you where you want to go. And we figured there must have been an accident on the highway or something like that, blocking it off. And so we took Siri's suggestion, and we ended up going down, I kid you not, 30 or 40 kilometres of unpaved roads. I was just so thankful that I had the Jeep with me, and we were stopping all the time, checking everything to make sure, because the amount of corrugation was just incredible. I was also worried about bogging in on the dirt. Fortunately, there hadn't been much rain, and so we were all good. Very, very happy to get to the dark site. Very happy indeed. So this is the container. So I have a shipping container where I keep all the scopes that I use up there. So right at the back, you can see me DMC 5-inch scope, and the boxes underneath it are where most of the scope stuff is. However, we had to deal with the heaviest part of the scope, which was the foot of the pier. I don't know exactly how much this weighs, but I think it must be over 150 pounds, maybe 200 pounds. So this is the thing that provides the stability for the whole setup. And so there's a pillar that sits on top of that as well, but it's much lighter. It's made from 2mm, maybe 3mm steel sheet, whereas this is close to half centimeter steel. Very, very heavy. We had to use an engine lifting hoist to get it out of its crate and onto the dolly. So this is why we had the wheels on that dolly. We knew that it would be very heavy. When we lifted this onto the back of the trailer, we had the assistance of a friend of the vendor who had a Powfinger lift, and he was able to lift it directly onto the trailer. So we manhandled this thing onto that dolly, and finally got it into the shipping container, and we were very happy about it. I was very happy about it. It was just a huge thing to take it all those thousands of kilometers, and especially have the adventure with the off-road road part. So the rest of the videos on the channel related to astronomy are going to be about building the observatory we want to run this thing from, and about the restoration of the scope. There's some other videos on the channel as well. These relate to managing the forest around the dark sky cabin. So there's a total of 160 acres, 163 acres actually. It's in a high bushfire area, and so I do a lot of fuel management. And this is also why we have a steel shipping container to keep the stuff in. I hope you enjoyed the channel, and I look forward to answering any comments that you might have.